Hi, I'm Tyra with an I.
And I'm Tuesday with a Y.
And you're watching Been There, Seeing That, the last season of Xena, Warrior Princess.
Yeah, this was a
Yeah.
season much like all the others, in that there were some strong storylines and then
Mm-hmm.
some random silly episodes.
Yeah. I feel like it probably like season 2 is probably my favorite. I think it peaked at season 3 and then it's wibbly wobbly throughout. But the season 1 is kind of hard to get through too. I think it was
Yeah.
just the nature of the beast. And maybe that's why everyone loves it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel great because this for the most part was my first time really watching that through the whole season. Like I caught bits and pieces of it growing up. By that time, like I had moved, and as there was only so much ownership of the TV I had at the time, so I didn't get to
Mm-hmm.
see it a lot.
Right.
um or it was like on a Saturday night, so it was a lot harder to watch Xena than before. So this was kind of great to sit through really for the first time. Like I'd seen a lot more of the fun episodes that we'll
Mm-hmm.
get to, and what might be my all-time favorite episode of Xena. Um, you were there, the one where it's the reporter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just one of my. It just fits so well. It and we'll get talk back to about it. But I think it's just culminates. It brings together what made Xena great so much, which is almost its hokiness and its ownership of what it is. I think it really grew into it what it was, or to have
Mm-hmm.
that episode. But yeah, this season it seems to be everything but the kitchen sink.
A little bit of the kitchen sink too.
Yeah, a little bit of the kitchen sink too. And it's like and by I think by us binge watching it, by the time we get here, like I've learned to surrender. Like that's what the show is. But
Right.
there are points where I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
There are some notes I've taken where I will write WTF, like what is happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I had a thought and now it's gone. But like, yeah, I think it's just so much like that surrendering to what this show really is. Oh yeah, I feel like particularly at the beginning of this season, where there seems to be a lot of sexy time. That I feel like the beginnings of what Lucy Lawless would go on to do, whether it was like Salem or Spartacus, where it was just as corny but sexy at the same time. That same sexuality that was starting to pop up,
Mm-hmm.
it's like in full force in those shows. I feel like it was starting to pop up here because it wasn't really that titillating before, but now
Mm-hmm.
it's just extra.
Yeah, they really went all out. I think this is also the season that really highlighted Gabrielle and Xena as a couple,
Mm-hmm.
more so than just like friends with a little bit of flirtation,
Mm-hmm.
which I liked. But it's like the last season to just lean into that because we all know anyway. We
Mm-hmm.
may as well just admit it.
Yeah, there was arguments. I remember kind of arguments at the time, but and then there seems to still be that contingent of argument, whether it's like for or against. Because the people that are for this, they're like, yeah, they're lesbians. It's a lesbian show, and but the bad point about that is like any dissension from
Right.
that, it's like, well, you're homophobic, and it's like, well, not really. I mean, they don't really answer the question. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, technically, we all know. And then for those who chose not to see, right,
Right.
right, they're like,
They're watching like
yeah,
through their
put
fingers.
blinders on. They're like, no, it's just about female friendship, and two women can be friends without this. And a woman in a powerful male position it isn't automatically a lesbian, which is true.
Yeah.
But I think
But
it's
I
quite
don't have
obvious.
friendships like that.
Yeah, I don't have friendships like that. And I feel like if you do, you're in somewhat denial, and like you need to just like because clearly you have found the love of your life, whether you want to admit it or not.
Just go for it.
Yeah, and that's my take on it.
They're
like,
soulmates.
Yeah. She in the last episode, she literally entered to a Kimmy, which we'll get into the last episode because we talk, to talk about series finales, which is very hard to do. But that girl at Kimmy, when she introduces her, she's like, "This is Gabrielle. This is my soulmate, Gabrielle." Mm-hmm. And even that goodbye at the end is very, very tender. And throughout this whole thing, they just act as a couple,
Totally.
Yeah, so let's start. Now that we did like first thoughts, let's talk about, I don't know, should we do Xena? Well, it is Xena. So let's talk about Xena's redemption arc, like as a first the season and then maybe Xena as a whole. What do you find?
I was really impressed by the end, like the middle to end of the season, because we've seen her resolve previous damage that she's done, still in a kind of like, it's whatever. Mm-hmm. Like that's how I was. I fixed it. Move on. But this seems to be she appears to be more emotionally involved in her reasons for. I mean, I guess spoiler alert. I don't know why I'm trying to like tiptoe around as if.
No, you could go for it.
If been around since 2001.
Yeah, and if anyone watching this that sees season 6 and is like, oh, like you spoiled that, it's like stop it. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So when she's like fighting, is it Groomhilda? And then there's also Broomhilda, right?
Yeah, I was right there with you.
Yeah. Because that episode though, where she's like returning the middle ring, I thought like that's normally I feel like she would have just been like, oh, I'll just like chuck it in the lake or whatever, and then they'll get it. But instead, she has to hand deliver it back to where it belongs. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a good arc to show that Gabrielle's really rubbed off on her in that way.
Yeah, I feel like Xena this season, you're right, she was definitely more emotionally involved. She was more emotionally involved in all respects, and it like there was a moment, I forgot where it was more in that really heavy Amazon episode, where like all of a sudden it was like, we're going to get as real as possible. That I was like, oh, being a mother and being with Gabrielle has really opened that heart center with Xena. That there seemed to be a softness that was coming through, whether it was just Lucy Lawless, who had played the part for so long, or whatever. It just kind of hung out in that space, and it was kind of great to watch. Like she really moved into being a mentor, to being a mother, to being a partner to Gabrielle, that and really, going through the motions of like, this is why this is important or not. As far as like, and here's a question that pops up because I seem to feel like this is the main theme of Xena going throughout from start to finish, which is, as someone who was evil, I don't know, like it's evil. Yeah, she was definitely evil, and I feel like she was just on the wrong path for so long. It's like, the question continually comes up, just like, what is Xena's redemption, and was it, the payment for that? What form was it going to take? Was it going to take for her to continue a life of service to other people? Was she going to be sentenced to death? Did she have to die, or was it life imprisonment? And that comes up just about once every season. And then we get a finale, get to the series finale, and it's, that it's that final thing is like, no, she has to stay dead. For the atonement of this, which I'm kind of on team. I didn't like this, especially because it wasn't as final. She ends up hanging out with Gabrielle as a ghost, which I think is extremely unfair. There's no healing. Yeah, I thought it was a weird choice. Well, there is a caveat to that. I wound up finding out in some research that originally it was just Gabrielle going off, and because I didn't see the first run of this, it was added on to later viewings. They added Xena in there because everyone hated it. Yeah. But I feel it's such a cop out because I don't think Gabrielle doesn't deserve to be haunted. Like, that's horrific. Like,
by her former lover.
No, that's if you really said bad. Like, in order that, like, it just seems like because they couldn't choose either way, they made like this weird compromise that didn't work, and it doesn't make sense if part of Xena's redemption is to stay dead, and they have this beautiful goodbye. To have that. Also, I don't like that she had to die again. Like, how many times we're gonna kill her? And then like this is my little rant, like side note rant of that finale. I did not dig it. I think we had seen her redeem so many times over. I would have switched this. Also, like, it seems weird to go all the way to Japan in the last episode.
It does. I have many questions. Like, did they just want to get one more continent in before it's over?
And then it's so weird and appropriative. I just would have rather that whole Valkyrie sequence to have been at the end if we were going to go there to have this big epic, and you see how Gabrielle rubbed up on her and how much she's changed, and the redemption is you righting the wrongs when you can, changing along the way, and still doing service. And I think that would have fit better. And then they could have just gone off, and we know they're having adventures because they're doing that anyway. I think by putting them in the East, you take them out of Xena and put them on this off adventure. And you know, I was sitting there, I was like, there was no 40,000 anything in that village, like maybe 40 people.
Maybe 4,000 at most.
On a crowded festival day, but it was not that wasn't what was going on. I think it just slightly missed the mark, but that's kind of like when you're doing episodic television like that, you don't have time. There was no end game plan. But yeah, getting back, what do you think as far as like the continuous theme of how is Xena redeemed? Let me bring it back.
Well, my statement on the final episode is that the way it ended felt as if they were trying to set it up for a Gabrielle spinoff. Because why else does she have the chakram and is like, oh, I'm going to this place where they need someone with the chakram. So I was like, oh, that seems like an odd choice. But again, I guess Xena wasn't supposed to be a spinoff of Hercules, and that turned out so it's plausible. I didn't look it up. That's just a theory I made up while I was watching it.
Yeah.
But overall, I do think it was interesting because at some point she has to become a better person and prove to us that she is. And so you can see clearly from season 1 to season 6, there is a big change. From like recovering from being a bloodthirsty warlord of sorts to someone who actually is the savior of certain groups of humanity or certain regions. So I think that's great, but I agree that the ending was whack, and I think it would have been much more poignant if Gabrielle and Xena could have gone on more adventures together, just been like, assume you know what happens as the series ends. Like, obviously they're gonna save people until they die. They could have even done like 5 minutes where they're both 80 and chilling at home. You know?
Going back to that farm.
With Ares popping by to cause a little trouble. Like they could have ended it in so many different ways, and it feels like a very odd choice.
I feel like it's always hard, right? Like when you have these characters, the redemption arc, like what actually redeems a person. Because I mean, particularly now, because you know, Mandalorian has started back up, so you know, there's a lot of Star Wars talk in the ether. Hence people are constantly going back to, you know, Darth Vader and everything like that. Or even, I was trying to think of other examples, like when is a character actually redeemed? And there's a lot of discussion about that. There's like really cool video essays about when Anakin is actually redeemed, was he redeemed, or, all those different questions. So like I acknowledge that it's very hard to write a redemption arc.
But it also seems subjective to me. Like, if I, as an audience member, accept it, but an audience member, like, the next apartment over hates it, like, they can't please everybody.
No, not at all.
So, like, I feel like she's been redeemed since the second season. She's still trying to do good, and she has, like, her moments of weakness. But maybe others wouldn't feel that she's redeemed until she sacrifices her life for the lives that she lost.
Yeah. But I feel like then they tripped themselves off because, we'll get to Gabrielle, but like there is an episode where it's a life for a life, and it kind of contradicts that last thing. Like you don't have to die to have redemption or, but I think at the end of the day, it may come down to like, I was looking things up, like Lucy Lawless had said that Xena is a good person who doesn't believe she is. So maybe that's why it fit a lot better for her to either die or, they tried to put her in prison a couple of times. But I feel like, I think it just did, to me, it just didn't fit with the show. Like she's died several times over and, like they even
she
give
always comes back.
She always comes back. Like guaranteed if they got another season, they would have found a way to bring her back. And in the episode, it's just this, they acknowledge it like, yeah, we could bring her back. But I just feel like the Valkyrie arc was more solid. Everything encompassing of the change that's happened in Xena, her trying to make things right, and the relationship between her and Gabrielle to the point that when she loses what she values most, it's memories of Gabrielle. And by losing Gabrielle, it changes fundamentally who she is. I feel like it was a lot more solid there. But once again, I do not have to do with studios. I don't have to deal with fans. I don't have to do with anything like that. Okay, so like on to Gabrielle.
Yeah.
Battling Bard of Podadia.
I'm impressed by her finally because she's kind of badass.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. I was cracking up though when I started watching the season because I thought her costumes just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like she's fit, she looks great, but I just thought it was amusing. Like, Xena's supposed to be this one who does like all these jumps and backflips and whatever. So in theory, she should be the one that looks more athletic. But because Gabrielle's a storyteller, but Gabrielle's like so buff, like her, she's got really defined muscles. It was very amusing. Although I guess like if I worked out really hard, I would also just want to walk around in a bra, like check.
Yeah, and a mini skirt.
Check me out. But no, I thought it was cool that she was kind of falling more towards a Xena way of being for a moment when she was a little more cruel and almost vengeful.
Oh yeah.
And then Xena had to pull her out of that, which was interesting because it shows Gabrielle isn't just like this pure Eli supporting person, but she also has a little darkness in her too.
Yeah, I think she's become battle weary from all of her adventures. And definitely that's what's happened, with what's happened to her from losing Perdiccas and dealing with Callisto, the whole thing with Hope.
Oh yes, Callisto didn't come back this season.
No, I mean technically she's there if you look at Eve, but I mean, I almost expected it too. Whether maybe they just couldn't get Hudson Lake back.
Maybe she's busy.
Yeah, because I remember. Because I was thinking of like if any crossovers happened, but by this time Hercules was over. Like he ended in like right around Xena 5, which is why it was like such a cool surprise when he was there when Eve was born. Because his show had like wrapped up, and then to see Michael Hurst is the guy who played the reporter. He
Oh, okay.
played Aeolus throughout, Hercules' sidekick throughout the whole show. So I whenever he pops up, because it's always like a really cool thing to look at, like tight knit groups like that, because he's directed, like I was looking through, he had directed several episodes, including that one of Xena, and I didn't know that, and I was like, oh, that's really nice. I know he would pop up. He pops up as a director in syndication every once in a while. Um, but yeah, so I was looking to see if anyone else would pop up. I mean, they bring Alti back like 3 times.
Yeah.
And I hate that
me.
chick. But yeah, getting
At
back.
first, I didn't recognize her in the modern episode.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why does she look so familiar? And then,
yeah, I was like, every time she popped up, I was like, why is she here? But getting back to Gabrielle, yeah, like I think she had just become so battle weary, and then she seemed to be souped out when she became an angel. When she came back with all of that knowledge. I guess that was always there. So this season, I love that we get to see specifically what makes Gabrielle snap, which is, since she's a heart, she's all heart, is anytime someone she loves deeply,
right,
is hurt, and then she can't almost function. So then Xena has to be the super logical one. It almost comes from Xena's part of being cold and like, or strategic, but it also comes from this love of Gabrielle. So you have that episode, Who's Gurkhan, where they have to go to the harem and get, because she finally goes home to Podadia after being dead for 25 years, and that's the, you know, her long-suffering sister, you know, and has to deal with that, and that makes Gabrielle snap. Then you have that next episode, which is, I wonder how they were getting there, but whatever. When they're traveling the desert, and
they do like a little genie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what really surprised me, the scene in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seemed out of character for her to not like try to find out who the possible stalker or whoever, you know, like whoever the foe is. It seems like she would normally try to figure out who that is. And in this, she was very impulsive.
Yeah, I think they've been trying to show how impulsive she is, and I think last season it was more blamed on Xena's pregnancy, that she wanted to be a little more peace loving. But Gabrielle, every once in a while, will pull out those sides really quick, and this is the one time where she shouldn't have done that. You know, it did seem weird to me, because she knew she was trying to see where Xena was at. What if that was Xena? She would have stabbed her best. Right. she would have stabbed her girlfriend.
It's just like, it's somebody who doesn't belong.
Yeah. Yeah, someone who doesn't belong. And then it was like a little weird, because they kept referring to him as a boy. I'm like, he's not a boy.
He's a man. Yeah. But also, why was he coming to deliver a message in the middle of a windstorm?
Yeah, you live in the desert. You know, I guess that's the first girl he's seen. I don't know.
Yeah, I just want to talk to her. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and then a lot of that gets wrapped up, and we get to see, I think the last bit of Gabrielle's journey is into that heavy to Hurricane and back, that heavy Amazon episode, where she takes over. She literally snaps on Varia for trying to kill her. I think, season 1 Gabrielle would have understood, and that would have been Xena snapping. This is like, she seeing Gabrielle like go off like that, and yet have this part of herself that is like, what am I going to do? Because that was a hard situation they were in.
But I wonder if that was also partly because Xena kept telling her, you know, like, you have to lead the Amazon. So I wonder if it's also, she's feeling the pressure of being a leader more so than she has before, which would make it, like, I had snap if suddenly I had to lead an army.
Yeah, and I think so too. And it leads from the episode prior before, where she's stuck between, because she was so lenient, because Eve goes to try to make amends with the Amazons, and that whole situation, because she was lenient, she didn't succeed, and now in this one I think it was a great example of what happens in life, right? That sometimes you keep flipping back and forth until you find some type of balance to what to do in almost no win situations, because it was perfectly fine in the episode before for Xena to fight Varia and to snap on, Gabrielle when she made the decision, the choices that she made. Um, and then the next episode, she was like, "What are you doing?" So it's you know, it's been very interesting, and Gabrielle's, you know, formation as a character is really cool. I think second go round, like I've always identified with Xena, but I feel in this situation I would definitely be Gabrielle with that emotion and storytelling and
Yeah.
trying
I
to
think
yeah.
Gabrielle had more depth overall as a character. Like Xena's developed, but she's still kind of two-dimensional, where Gabrielle, I think, is more three-dimensional.
Yeah. She's more, I think, with every situation where Xena always seems, because she's written to always be ahead of the game, one step ahead of most people.
Yeah.
Gabrielle is always dealing with things in the moment, and then that makes her sincerely interesting, because you as the audience member is like, yeah, what would I do? Or you get mad right along with her, where Xena has put her in a situation she shouldn't be in, or anything like that. But yeah, I think overall, I do love the battling bard of Podadia and her scrolls. Like to see that her scrolls go all the way to the future.
Yep, they're uncovering them every day.
Yeah. So let's go on to some other arcs. The Amazons, since we're with the Queen of the Amazons.
Yeah. I don't really have many thoughts about the Amazons, other than I think it's cool how they run their society.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't really thought too much about how they have any growth or anything, because it seems like, because Gabrielle keeps popping in and out, that everything's disrupted for them each time that happens.
Yeah, I feel like I just, because they've just been so consistent, and right now, I mean, I think the tragedy is you see that they don't really save themselves. Like there's no Amazons now, but that was a different time and place. We don't see finally what happens to them, but we know they're very dwindled in numbers. Right. I think it was cool because they were like, yeah, I don't think we've seen it since. It's like, I usually want a feminist society, maybe in Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman movie. Yeah, that's there are Amazons as well. Yeah, there are Amazons as well. Yeah. They were just seen not as like this perfect society where this is happening. I mean, they had all their stripes and politics and traditions, and what did it mean to be an Amazon, and have that come against Gabrielle's sense of duty, have Xena always be there but not be an Amazon, but she's a warrior. So I think it was just really cool to see the formation of this group that, all female society that wasn't too perfect or so boxy or something. They were just, it felt like it had a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, it wasn't a like, look what we can accomplish when men are around. It was just like its own strong society that has issues like anybody else or any other organization.
Mm-hmm. And even as far as like men, they don't seem to be overall men hating. They didn't seem to be man hating as well. Like they could have been written as that, or always like, you can't tell me what to do. They hated specific dudes, and some of them were like more naive.
Joxer had a bad time, but
yeah. But he was also watching. Yeah, he was also peeking. They seem to get married. I mean, Effany was married. So like. They had seasons where they hooked up with dudes. It was just more like the prevailing attitude whenever a man popped in when he wasn't supposed to, was more like when you're hanging out with your girlfriends, like, and someone's boyfriend decides to appear at brunch. Yep. And you're like, why is he here?
Like, we didn't invite him.
Yeah. And I kind of dig that. So yeah, I guess the next one would be Aries. God of War.
I think Ares is my favorite character because I don't know if you were already recording when you mentioned, but like he's very, very consistent. But he does have some development, and even though he kind of goes back to his old self, it's still nice to see that because he has these feelings for Xena, or because now he's mortal, he has to access his emotions in a more practical sense and not just rely on war and power.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it just seems like some rich child. Like he's played in a way where it's not annoying, but he's very much a rich child who's had everything, like is suddenly poor or something.
Right. Yeah. He's like, I hate this. As a rich kid who is suddenly poor would also.
Yeah, and I enjoy it. Like there was like they could have played it as this really sad thing, but he's like, no, I am missing who I am, and then you have to agree with him, and I think that's so fun. I wasn't recording them, but yeah, he's the most consistent character throughout, where he's consistently played, and yet there is a lot of growth. Old Ares Had a Farm is a lot of fun.
That I wrote down as a throwaway episode because it is, but it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah, from him like, okay, what are you gonna do now? And he's like, I'm just gonna wander around.
Yeah.
and they're like, you have to like, and Xena realizes it's about her recapturing something for herself. But Ares is not going to stay on that farm, and he's not. That's an adorable relationship with that dog.
Yeah, it's so cute. I just like the introduction of it's a wolf, and it's like this adorable Australian Shepherd or something.
Yeah. Perfect. Would have hoped it would have been some big wolf, and he would have known how to deal with it, and that would have been his cute little thing.
But no, it's a cute little domesticated animal.
Because that's my thing in like you didn't see Hercules, but there was like this couple. I forgot like her mythological name, but her husband was a giant, and they're mad at Hercules because Hercules had to kill the children as part of like the 12 labors or something, but she has another baby, and it's like this weird little tentacle thing. And it's also kind of cute, but it's kind of gross. And there's a part of me that would have hoped that dog would have been something like that. They would have brought that ridiculousness
like
over.
Supernatural, yeah.
But yeah, when he's saying, they're like, don't you have a dog on Olympus? They're like, not with one head. He's like, not with one head. So I guess they decided, he felt in love with this like adorable Australian Shepherd.
I also like the neighbor lady that kept coming over, and he was trying to impress her. And then I forget what happened, where he was like, this lady has issues.
Yeah, I think it's finally when she said, "Oh yeah, are those your when your daughters come back?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, I don't like."
He's like, "Oh great, now I'm old." Yeah.
Yeah, but
that's to feel what it was like to be mortal, re-age.
Yeah, and like they play it over into that you were here when he gets his powers back, but he's trying to get laid. He's like drunk. He's just not good as a mortal, and I think that's great. And the last appearance of him, where even to this modern day, Ares is being Ares, and he's played so well by Kevin Smith. I can't even tell if he's like ad-libbed or not. But that last Xena scroll, where he's trying to get married, renew that marriage contract.
That's all he wants is Xena to be his wife.
Yeah, but I also think like it's a little inconsistent with how they got Gabrielle back, but whatever. But yeah, I couldn't help smiling with all his one-liners and whatever, and like just how blatantly thirsty he is.
Right. And he doesn't care who knows. He's just like, this is the person that I want.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Understand.
And even in the middle of a fight, he's like, "Hey, sugar, how you doing?"
I like him a lot. He's very amusing.
Yeah, like I think he ends up being like my absolute favorite because he's played very, very differently on Hercules, but with understanding like why
Right.
Hercules wouldn't be the same relationship, you know. But even with Gabrielle, a little bit, there's a little bit of a difference. You know, they just, well, I feel like they learn to like each other, but they won't admit that they do.
Right. Like, we tolerate each other.
Mm-hmm. And they're both cool with that.
Yeah, didn't Aries say something like about how Xena is her soulmate?
I think something.
Or her lover, maybe he said. Okay, so you acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even when I think it was like last season when he buried them, you know, when you were redeeming or something or whatever, self or whatever, you were hers, but when you were in battle, you were mine. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like in a modern day sense that just would have been a throuple, but I don't think. Yeah, and we get to see Aphrodite one last time.
Yeah, which I do appreciate because she's good comic relief.
Mm-hmm. It was a little creepy in that whole Caligula episode. I'm not gonna lie.
You know, this is probably awful, but Caligula really reminded me of Jerry Seinfeld. And while I'm watching it, I was like, I can't get this out of my head because, like, Seinfeld would have been in the early '90s. I know it's not him, but for like, that was the late '90s, early 2000s, it could have feasibly had been him. It isn't, but I couldn't believe how much, like, how the way his appearance is, I couldn't get it out of my head.
Yeah, it was a very 90s performance. Like, that was Alexis Arquette, and Alexis at the time was pretty, I guess you could say that hot actor / I would say actress, because she was like one of the first people to like transition, and no one, but we didn't know at the time what to do with an Alexis Arquette. I think I would love to see what she would be doing now, you know, instead of having such a hard time like at that time, because I think she wound up, I don't know if it was a suicide or she overdosed, but like that had happened. But yeah, Alexis, like, she would just pop up and just be so much fun and and different things. So I had forgotten that until that episode, and I was like, it's
Alexis. But the performance was creepy. You're right, because I mean it's believable that Caligula is someone that gorged himself.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing much worse things than that was happening in that episode. But when you see Aphrodite just kind of drugged out and like, you know, clearly in a rapey situation, that's really
right. But they had to save her.
Yeah. And then like to bring it around to like different arcs and like fun episodes, Xena loses her ability to kill gods, but then at the same time, it's a very weird, almost like arrogant, I don't know, what's the word? Would it be gaslighting with Archangel Michael, where he's trying to control the situation? So like, and he does that several times for every interaction.
Isn't he supposed to be good? Because he seemed relatively sinister in that episode.
Yeah, and throughout, like, he knows sending Lucifer down to Xena, it almost like that's how it's supposed to play out. Right. But I feel like that was a very 90s interpretation of a lot of angels or whatnot that would pop up, where maybe it was like a reaction to religion in the 90s and 2000s. Like, we were heading towards 1999, so there was a lot of talk about that, and there was so many like religious, supernatural, whatever's, you know, whether film or television popping up. But that seemed to be the prevailing trend, where you would just have like this push against,
like, Touched by an Angel was out around that, I think.
Yeah. And but then also you would have like the prophecy, and was it 7 days or something like that, where it was just this prevailing feeling that somehow, some way, that this anger towards God having a plan, and you couldn't change it, and you're being almost manipulated into it, which shows very much in this season, like, to the point it's like, why are you doing that? Like, you could just ask, or like, because you knew you were forcing Xena's hand because she was taking too long in your eyes. and you didn't care about the,
Right.
the Olympian
Yeah.
gods. But I feel like that was a very 90s, reign of days or end of days type writing
Yeah.
that was happening at the time.
This is kind of like a side track, but I do think it's really amusing how they mixed like Greek, Roman, Norse, and Christian gods.
Yeah.
And they can all happen in the same episode. And I'm really curious, like in the Caligula episode, what audiences had to say about that, because it's mixing clearly Christianity and Roman. Is that
yeah.
Aphrodite's
Roman? Yeah, they're in Rome.
So I was curious, like, I wonder if people got upset at the censors or something for
not about that. Like, I don't remember the anger being about that. It was about more how much or how less much they're going to show Gabrielle and Xena being together, or like some of the sex, right? Like, because we see a lot more like the it's desert very episode.
Sensual.
Yeah, like I don't think there was other cuts of stuff, but like the desert episode when Xena and Gabrielle are taking a bath and they're clearly getting up out of there, like I think that may have been cut for television. But oddly enough, any of their religious stuff, not so much. Only in like season 4 when they were portraying Hindu gods, and it's because Hindus were upset, so they dropped an episode. But the rest of this, I think because at the time, like the attitude was like, anyone watching this show is not going to get up in arms about that necessarily. But at the same time, there was a lot of, and we kind of touched on this when we were talking about season 4, this prevailing like yoga, meditation, it's all one path to source type feeling that was going through. And like I said, like with the writing, you can see as far as like how they're addressing the angels and what their type of attitude is. There was a lot of questioning of that. So I don't remember that being any type of discussion other than like, oh, that's weird. Like, okay, so are they talking about God? Or they're not talking about God. I remember that kind of being the attitude, but later on it was, it wasn't as touched upon. But I guess like forums and everything now you could, now it would just be analyzed. But it's so weird that that's not what's talked about. No one was in arms about that. They just didn't want the lesbians on TV.
They were like, let's pick our battles.
Yeah. So let's talk about sex. Yeah, like that whole 7 deadly sins making Lucifer. Like it starts with the haunting of Amphibolus when Xena goes home, and I guess they go on that world tour to see what's happened. So I guess we could start at the beginning of the season and then go through fun episodes. So yeah, that first one is about Ares being human, trying to have an army and being tormented by the Furies.
Yeah. I thought it was really amusing that he was losing his mind, or that to the people he's trying to lead, it looks like he's losing it because he's talking to someone they can't see. That was really great. Just to be like, shut up. And they're like, sorry. Sorry, Aries. We don't know what we're doing, but all right.
Yeah, it was this interesting little aftermath, like and it kind of sets up the different arcs. You have Ares being human, Eve becoming what she's going to become and dealing with, and then you have the Amazon. So I thought that was cool. And then they start that whole tour of like, let's go back to where we came from to see if those people are okay, and they were not okay. So you get to the haunting of Amphibolus and have a witch trial, which is weird.
Heaven and hell again.
Which
I guess that's episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah, 2 and 3 are like, or is a 2-parter, which I thought it was interesting.
I also really don't care for Eve's character, or
I don't at all. I feel like it would have been more interesting if Varia ended up being Eve. Does that make sense? Like, just because of how that relationship goes. I feel like they didn't understand, like, it was a good premise. What if Xena becomes, like, to explain Lucy Lawless's pregnancy? What if she gets pregnant and it's the end of the gods? Still very interesting. The only thing is they kind of neutered that character by making her completely peace loving and not giving her an arc to build. Like, they super like zoom through Xena's arc in that one character.
Should have been, we should have seen her a few times feel like that violent impulse that her mother clearly has and that she had when she was up to like 20. So to have her just be kind of like a wet blanket the whole time was
really just exciting. Annoying, like, just and seems to have lost all ability to fight as well, like just what like, I just think it would have been a lot more, because Varia is just written as a stronger character, where this is another warrior. I think they could have, if they really thought about it, could have found this niche between Gabrielle and Xena, where you can see, like, this is an amalgamation of both of them, and she's learning to be this peacekeeper.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, I guess, like, she had that come to Jesus moment, but still, or the come to Eli moment, but still.
Yeah. She's an Elysian.
But then even the choices she's making, whether it's to go to the Amazons or to go to Rome and preach, that it doesn't make sense, the things that she's doing. You know all of this. You've traveled all over the world. You've been a conqueror. You're the bitch of Rome. They seem to have just taken out of her head any like thoughts of strategizing or understanding how the world works or anything like that to get by. So yeah, I guess part of me wanted to skip over Eve, because like I just kind of, I would have rather Varia than her. Right. And it would have been very interesting to see a daughter that is not so quick to embrace Xena, because she didn't have her. Like, if, like, during that whole thing, they had left her with the Amazons and this child grew up and, you know, she had a mommy complex. I think that would have been really, really interesting. And then you could have put, like, I don't know, make the Amazons crusaders, or, you know, you could have made them like the beginnings of the Knights Templar or something. Like, I don't know, if you're going to go the Jesus route. But yeah, from even her in that haunting of the was figure out how to exorcise demons, just because Gabrielle is just, they just use her as like a punching bag during that whole episode. And then the next episode, she clearly doesn't know. They give her nothing to do, while her mom is basically, you know, getting deadlier and deadlier.
Yeah, she's just gonna pray.
And having weird like orgies or whatnot. And I love how Gabrielle is in on it. Like, you were getting really close to Lucy. What's going on? Well, you were getting really close to Virgil. What's going on? Which I love that whole episode. Like that.
With Virgil. He's in a couple of them, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's in the one.
He's in that one, and he's in that one with the cannibals, which is really weird. I don't remember if he pops up again, but
yeah, the way that they presented him in those two episodes, I thought that he was going to be a longer thread in this season, with like him and Gabrielle and flirtation there. So it was a surprise that it didn't. I don't think that he did come back after the cannibal episode.
No. Yeah.
But the cannibals look so much like orcs from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Or I thought, like, what were they called? But we already had, I feel like we already had that conversation with those people from before. Palmera. I want to call them Palmera, but the Horde.
Yeah. I heard they're called too. There is a P in there somewhere.
Yeah. There's like, I feel like we already had this conversation. And then they were like, we should have a Horde episode. Oh, but they wouldn't be like that. Oh, like, we'll just
we'll make it really similar.
We'll make them really similar.
They eat people this time.
Yeah. And gross out. Yeah, which was like this whole episode, which I feel like Gabrielle's arc isn't really dealt with because it's her dealing with the aftermath of having killed that dude. And she just kind of comes to the she comes to that conclusion, the some type of peace with it, just as almost as fast as she had killed that dude. Like it's
yeah, like she's injured, so she's not really in much of the episode anyway. And then yeah, by the end of it, she's like, all right,
yeah, I'm cool now. I just needed I just needed like really my life to be in danger to realize the value of life. Okay, so let's move on to like, because I think we got most of the arcs through. There are a couple of like recurring actors that I love that they just brought them back, whether it's for whether it's even for like brownface. So you had that lady that played like the Amazon Queen and then the sheriff, and then she ends up in that desert episode. To a couple of people, even the guy who kept playing the king of the daughter that looks just like Xena, he pops up as that circus dude and the original owner of the dog in the farm episode. So I like that they kind of like did a world tour and it brought back as many actors as they could. And I thought that was really sweet. So I think the biggest, before we switch on to fun episodes, the biggest arc going back is that Valkyrie.
Yeah, the Beowulf.
The Beowulf. And with Grimhilda. And I think because technically, I mean, in reality, those are two separate tales, and I don't think they realized putting those two names together. What it sounded like.
I kept being like, wait, am I hearing things, or are they two different people?
Yeah, it took me a moment to realize, no, Brunhilde belongs in Beowulf, and Broomhilda is the Valkyrie. But
and they look kind of the same when they're both in human form. So I was like, wow, you're losing me.
Yeah, but I think it's fun. I enjoy it. There's some weird things about it. I don't particularly like that portrayal of Odin. I don't know if it's a Marvel thing or what, but I just felt like I think it probably is a Marvel influence, just because I just like what he was falling for would be some Thor shit, like Thor would have fallen off of that. But I think it's a very interesting portrayal of Odin, with his like 80s metal hair.
Yeah, he's in some sort of rock band.
Yeah, which is what you want out of like Valhalla. Like it's just all 80s rock anyway. Totally. It should look like an Iron Maiden album cover.
The thing that I thought was weird-ish with this storyline, though, was how quickly Broomhilda changed from like her original intentions to just like spending a couple hours with Gabrielle, and then it's like, oh, all right. Let's go down that path instead.
Yeah. So
like, all right, well, Gabrielle's got some superpowers.
Yeah, that was like I was originally, while I was watching it, I was like, okay, so she's clearly trying to replace Gabrielle as Xena's whatever, or like there's something going on there, to like, oh, she came to hook up with Xena, fell in love with a girlfriend. And now it's like, I'm going to prove my love to you. And it was like,
like there's a lot going on, Broomhilda.
Yeah, there is like 17 different relationships in there. There's like Xena and Gabrielle. There's the past between Xena and Odin. There's like Brynhilda and Odin. There's Beowulf. I feel like he wanted a little Beverly of both. Like he admired Xena, but then he saw Gabrielle and was into that. And there
was a lot going on.
There was a lot going on, and then even though it's just finishing up, that third episode was interesting. I feel like it wound up being more like a filler or a tag because they didn't have enough time in the other two.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would have definitely preferred this to be like the series finale.
Yeah, I think it was a little weak in the third part of the third
Mm-hmm.
episode of that sequence.
Mm-hmm. Or the third act.
Yeah, because I was confused. Like at the end of the second act, we'll call it. It's not as if Xena had lost her memory, but suddenly in the third, like she's marrying some guy
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't seem to know who she is. I was like, are we in the future? What happened?
Yeah, it was like 1 year later, and it's taken from like this is why I kind of dig it, because it is taken from not only Norse mythology but for the whole rain cycle with the Valkyries. So that is done in 3 operas. So Broomhilda originally is a Valkyrie that loses her memory and is like has to deal with like the ring or whatever, and she's like the favored Valkyrie of Odin, and I forget what happens, but like that's where Stilgard and everyone comes in. So yeah, it follows the trajectory of that, which is why Xena's getting married to this king, and instead of Beowulf, it had been like they mix up several different things. It's the Beowulf story with the ring cycle, and then they add other Norse mythology in there to tie it all together and just make it a Xena fanfic. Yeah. Of these 3 things, and you get what's going on, but it also leads to a lot of confusion because you're like, what's happening? Mm-hmm. And why does
trying to keep track of who's who because it's so many new characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it almost demands that you kind of know what's going on or just accept what's going on. It's one of the two.
I just kept being like, I think I understand. Did I understand?
Mm-hmm.
I think I understand.
Yeah. It's like, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so fun episodes we wrap this up.
For season 6 specifically?
For season 6 specifically. Your favorite episode, or at least your favorite episode of season 6.
Let me look. I don't really care for the modern episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I did like Gabrielle's birthday episode, even though that was clearly a throwaway.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought it was amusing that they're doing pranks and Aphrodite comes back, which is also fun.
Yeah, I prefer to think that's how it ended. They're just flying in the sky. It was Gabrielle's birthday.
Oh,
and that's
yeah. That would have been good. Just put on the helmet. And just that scene in there where, since they had the dupe helmet, it was great when that guy put it on totally believing he could fly and just left. Like, it probably shouldn't be funny, but it was amusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Another one I really liked.
Well, before we leave, what did you think of the last centaur, that centaur baby?
Oh, I pretended it didn't exist.
Okay, cool.
Because I was so disturbed at the baby centaur. Like, how does it come out of a woman?
Well, first of all, she had to give her a C-section, which I would want to say she's not going to be that up and ready, and she's not going to be sewn up that quickly. It is just so much.
Yeah. I mean, the whole episode was kind of not great to me because it also confuses me when they bring back people as different characters that kind of look the same. Like, Marius is also playing his son. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, we're going back and forth in time also. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep track of, like, now are we back in time? Because the guy looks the same.
Yeah. Like, I feel like they wanted to bring him back, didn't know how, but at the same time, it goes to my whole Xena's already redeemed. It's like, how much are we going to talk about this?
Right. Yeah.
But so your favorite pick.
That one disturbed me. But I think I'll go with Gabrielle's birthday because that was one I did enjoy.
Okay. I feel like You Are There, I'll stick with that, is my favorite episode, where it was like modern but not, and they just kind of do a Xena world tour. They go with the Valkyries.
It's kind of like a mockumentary almost.
Yeah, and it kind of leads into what I was saying, where it's just like I felt like they had an episode order to fell and felt the need to do something big, but I feel like they answered a lot of questions already. And one of them, as much as it is a throwaway episode, was done in that episode, where you see Xena actively trying to help. You see her being questioned about who she really is and what she really is, and have those answers come from people who have dealt with her and been like wronged by her in various different ways to other ways. And I feel like it was a strong wrap up for what we need, but it's also hilarious just to have that.
Yeah, it was amusing because it was, I guess, since the show has already gotten away with so much silliness, of course they can do an episode like that, but it wasn't expected that now there's this reporter trying to ask Xena questions while she's in the middle of a battle. And just like, now we're going to interview Xena and Gabrielle together. And I did like the end where the static comes out. And they're like, what do you mean?
You're out of tape. Yeah, oddly enough, as much as I don't like Eve, my favorite part of that episode is when she's telling them to fuck off. And she's cursing.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I was like, well, finally they give her something to do.
Yeah, right? Other than just pray and look peaceful.
Yeah. And even with that whole prayer thing when she wanted, because that's not something Eli would do, that whole atonement, like, we want you to flog us. And she's like, do it. Okay, so as a series as a whole, what would you say your favorite Xena episode is?
I liked all of the episodes that had, I never remember the guy's name. His name is like Salmon or something.
Oh, Salmonius.
Yes, thank you. Any episode that had him in it, I enjoyed immensely.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I do like some of the sillier moments. You Are There is probably my all-time favorite. I do love what's it called? The original musical episode, not that second one. I love that one.
Yeah.
I kind of always really dig when the Amazons show up, but I think that's that part of me that loves sword and sorcery, and wanted to be an Amazon princess running around with a Shira sword, you know, so like that always digs into the little kid part of me.
Yeah, I didn't like the first musical episode, but I did really like the second one that they did.
Okay. So we're a little switched. That's fine.
Yeah. I think because the first one I felt as if it was too silly. And then I was prepared by the time the second one came around. I was like, okay, this is just how the show goes.
Yeah, I think I also enjoy like daily life episodes too. Anytime Aries shows up. So yeah. I think You Are There encompasses all that I love about Xena. Because we got some Aries.
My least favorite of all time was that sea creature one. Where Gabrielle's got like an octopus baby and lives under the sea with Joxer.
Oh yeah. Married with Fish Sticks. Yeah, that was weird.
That was like 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, I feel like I just
you wiped it from your memory.
Yeah, there are some episodes where it's like that. Or I don't like it when it gets too dark. So I don't think there's any episode I automatically go, yeah, when it's Married with Fish Sticks is probably my least favorite. So I didn't even want to sit through that.
No, it was so hard to sit through.
Yeah. And then I immediately like, and then I have to be reminded of it. Right. I didn't like the series finale. Like I could have done without that.
If they would have just done the last 5 minutes differently, I would accept it. But
yeah. I don't like Alti.
No. But I guess that's good. Like she's a good villain because we don't like her at all.
Yeah. But I should be able to look at her. It's just like, oh, we have to deal with this again.
Modern Alti was easier to look at. And I
Yeah.
think it's because she wasn't so in your face a villain until the end when
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I guess anything I kind of just don't dig maybe happens in season 4, like maybe season 4 as a whole.
Oh,
But
and any episode with I'm totally losing my train of thought. The chin. Bruce Campbell. any
like
episode
this
with,
one.
any episode with Bruce Campbell is 2 thumbs up.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, we didn't get a Bruce Campbell this season. I mean, we got a Carl Urban. They brought Caesar back.
Yeah.
They brought Joxer back a couple of times.
I written in my notes, like, where's Joxer?
Mm-hmm.
And then he shows up for like 20 seconds.
Yeah, you almost forget that he's dead. I was like, we could have fought from.
I was wondering, did he just get another gig so he didn't have any time?
Yeah, I think they were trying to keep it that he was dead, and then they were like, how we're going to bring him back. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird because he wasn't on any of the other Raimi shows. So I think he was just chilling.
He's like, I get my check.
No, he must have just been hanging out. But
he had a fight with his brother, and
maybe. I do like that we get to see. We saw Meg one last time.
Yeah, that's
she pops out of the cake.
Yeah,
especially because Aries thinks it's Xena for like a hot second.
Like, oh, yeah, this is new. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, and like I said, it starts with a lot of. You could tell they're having fun, and I enjoy when you can see the cast and the crew that is obviously tight knit and have fun, and they still are. Like, there's going to be a Xena convention next year, hopefully.
Is now a good time to show my
yeah, there you go. Yeah, I have my candles up, but you can't see them. It's like too much glare.
Our Xena swag.
Xena swag. Yeah, I just don't ever really wear t-shirts, so I was like, get something for yourself that you'll
actually use.
Yeah. So yeah, really excited about that. But yeah, 6 seasons, 25 years. For me, just to like wrap up, what do you feel like having like sat back and watched the whole thing? Now that you watched the whole thing and everything encompassing in it.
Yeah, so when I saw it on TV when I was younger, I don't think I paid attention to really anything that was happening. I think I just enjoyed that it was a cool, tough lady on TV. And so being an adult watching it, it seems really kind of ahead of its time for what it's representing, which is cool. Although it's surprised that we still haven't gotten too many action movies or TV shows led by women. Like, we have a few here and there, but not as many as you would think, considering how popular the show was.
Yeah, I feel like syndication, like, once Buffy came on the scene, that changed a lot in the vernacular. All of a sudden, everything got younger. And I think that's, speaking to things Xena did first. Like, Xena, I mean, maybe she was in her 20s when she started, but she was definitely an older character. This was someone who was a grown-up already.
Right.
And
yeah, she wasn't 18.
Yeah, and then we moved that paradigm back to where everything needed to be like Buffy, and then everything got dark. So those shows are out there, but they either became ensembles or they became kind of like Buffy-like. And then definitely when they came through, it was really about how dark can we get? Because I think by the time Battlestar Galactica came out and Starbuck was now a chick, and that actress pops up still all the time, you have like the footprints everywhere, but they're part of ensembles.
Right. And even Alias is female led, but it seems like there's only a few popular ones, or it is more almost like WB teen focus.
Yeah, it is very like on if they're older, the part of our ensemble. If they're younger, it's on the CW right now. They've been trying over the last 25 years to bring Xena back, but I feel like it's very much like whenever they say they're going to be reboot Buffy, or I mean they've actually rebooted
That
Charmed.
Xena would be really hard, I think, to bring back in a
Yeah.
way that people actually enjoy and want to watch now. Because
Mm-hmm.
if they bring it back the way that it is or was,
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be hard pressed to get people to watch it.
Yeah, I don't.
For anything more than nostalgia.
Yeah, I think they would have to really wholly reconceptualize this. And truth be told, like my generation has to die before that happens. I just feel like we're now going to get a proper Xena. It won't be able to stand on its legs. You're going to have like the internet is too much. There have been shows that, you know, whether it's Winona Earp, which I haven't watched, that seems to have that similar feeling. I know a lot of people loved Lost Girl, the 100. I'm trying to think if there's one other show, The Legend of the Seeker, which was another Raimi New Zealand outfit. So it's like if you're traveling through fandoms, like that's still there, particularly in syndication or anything. But now I guess you would say streaming. So it's still there, those types of shows. But on the mainstream and what gets a lot of attention, it's like ensemble cast, and it's all about awards bait now. So you know, for a long time, Game of Thrones just dominated the ether. But for me, wrapping this up to getting to watch it again, and I've watched Xena several times over, it's kind of nostalgic because I was there to kind of watch it grow. Like Xena came around at the same time like the internet came around, so it now had that fandom. I remember the Xena magazine, I remember Xena conventions. And then once the last 10 years, when conventions got bigger, then they went to the bigger conventions. Now it's coming back. So like I said, next year there's in the summer, hopefully there'll be a Xena convention in LA. But yeah, for me, watching this over with now more analytical eyes, it was like, yeah, this is why I love Xena so much. It was like really a huge part of my life, and part of friendships, and part of me growing as a geek. I feel like, you know, as much as like Star Wars was the first thing I was, you know, introduced to, I feel like Xena, that was something that I shared with my mom. Xena was mine, like all by myself. So that was my fandom and what I started to watch and would lean towards, and, you know, kind of like, this is my thing. And then later on led to all my geeky interests. So thank you, Xena.
It's funny, my partner will always, he jokes that I'm an undercover nerd. Because I don't, like, Xena's cool, and like, you know, there's a lot of really cool like geeky things, but I don't really think of them as being specifically geeky. It's just like, it's a really cool show with a badass chick, like that's what it is. But apparently to other people, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, and watching it on Sci-Fi now, they're celebrating 25 years, like the cosplayers that have come and popped up on the ether, because I started posting for this, and like Xena is still huge. Or like it's weird and really touching at the same time to get like messages from people. When like last week I posted the Aries photo, and to get this like touching message, like, thank you for like posting on, because no one ever posts. It's like, I just posting because I love him. Or someone who will come through, what about Carl Urban? And I was like, yeah.
They're like, yes, let's talk about Carl Urban.
Yeah. And so that fandom, that's the type of, I feel like, you know, we talk about different fandoms. I feel like that's the fandom you kind of hope for as an actor, that follows you through. Because Xena, you know, not Xena, Lucy Lawless is still working. I think she's on the new Ash versus the Evil Dead. Like, she's working with Raimi and Bruce Campbell again. I yeah, I haven't checked it out. It's, but I think Renee O'Connor is hanging out in Australia or New Zealand and is doing dramatic work. So they're all working. Everyone's hoping in the Sam Raimi Doctor Strange we're going to see all of them because they tend to like just pop up. They all popped up in that Spider-Man, and Sam seems to, I feel like both behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, Xena encompasses a lot that I would like to be in the front of the industry, which is like just doing your own thing with a lot of love and having a cast and crew that remains loyal. Because now even look at what Sam Raimi has built, and like Bruce Campbell was just his college roommate. He was like, hey, I'm trying to make this movie out in the woods, and they made Evil Dead, and he snatched up his brother, and all these different people, and to dare to have this imagination, this quirky, gory imagination that like leans towards.
That's also marketable that audiences will watch, because I feel like we're often told a lot as like indie filmmakers, you could make what makes you happy, but it doesn't mean it's going to sell.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's found the balance between like working with people that he likes, making content that he likes, and also making money.
Yeah, which I could tell you is a hard thing because I've been told to change. But yeah, so let's end on that. Thank you, Xena. And thank you, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and all you guys, because I love you.
And also hire us.
Yes.
Give us a job.
Yeah. To Lucy Lawless and Renee O'Connor, we thank you.
We should have had like a glass of champagne or something.
Yeah, we have water bottles. Yeah, why didn't we do it? Sorry. So cheers to Xena. Alrighty.
Yeah. Hydrated.
Yes. See y'all later.